As genetic testing in search of heritage has become quite the hit lately, the desire to find Viking DNA has gained the spotlight everywhere, not only among Scandinavians. However, the idea of Viking DNA itself is very problematic, to say the least, and I'll explain here why. Besides the more simplistic argument that Viking was an occupation, which it was indeed, first and foremost, other factors come to play when discussing late Iron Age Scandinavians: genetic diversity, genetic markers, and cultural identity. Genetics is useful. It can tell you a lot about the movement of peoples and contacts between them. For example, you can discover that families of Scandinavians were buried together when they went raiding, but much less about how they identified themselves or they were seen in their communities. The obsession with finding your identity in DNA is as ridiculous and absurd as the idea of finding it in your blood, as it was the case in the 19th and 20th century, and can lead to some very serious political misappropriations like the so-called Nordic race. So, when seeing how seriously people take genetic testing nowadays to confirm some assumptions or explore who they are, to me as a historian, that raises a lot of concern. However, thank the Asir or Vanir or whomever, we also have scientific studies that clarify this, such as this one here, the Genetic History of Scandinavia from the Roman Iron Age to the present, published last year in the journal Cell by a large team of geneticists, biologists and archaeologists, which essentially blows up the racist and white supremacist rubbish associated with Vikings. This article investigates how gene flow from various regions shaped the genetic landscape of Scandinavia over the past 2,000 years. The researchers analyzed genetic data from 297 ancient genomes spanning from Roman Iron Age to the present day. They also examined data from 16,638 modern Scandinavians to understand contemporary genetic patterns. They combined new whole genome sequences data from 48 ancient individuals with previously published data from these 249 ancient individuals, including additional sequence depth for 13 previously published Viking Age individuals from the Swedish town of Sigtuna. New sites included both burials, chamber burials, and archaeological sites like the migration period Sandby Ring Fort. And here are the key findings. British-Irish ancestry became widespread in Scandinavia from the Viking period onwards. This gene flow is evident in both ancient and modern genomes. However, modern Scandinavians have lower levels of British-Irish ancestry than individuals from the Viking and medieval periods, suggesting a decrease in the relative contribution of this ancestry over time. The article posits several possible explanations for this phenomenon, including subsequent gene flow from other regions, social stratification based on ancestry impacting reproduction, or biases in the available ancient samples, which may not fully represent all ancestors of modern Scandinavians. Then we have the Eastern Baltic ancestry, which is more localized to Gotland and central Sweden. Similar to the trend with British-Irish ancestry, the proportion of Eastern Baltic ancestry is higher in ancient genomes from the Viking and medieval periods compared to modern Scandinavians, suggesting a decrease in this ancestry's contribution over time. The north-south genetic cline observed in modern Scandinavians with greater genetic distance from southern populations in the north likely existed in the Viking Age and possibly earlier. This cline is mainly attributed to differential levels of Uralic ancestry, which decreases as you move south. The presence of Uralic ancestry is supported by genetic markers and the distribution of Y chromosome haplogroup N1A1, which is linked to Uralic-speaking groups. The study suggests a potential bias toward females in the introduction of Eastern Baltic and British-Irish ancestries during the Viking period. This inference is based on the observation of higher levels of female-biased gene flow from these regions. The authors highlight that the genetic history of Scandinavia is a very complex tapestry woven with gene flow from multiple source populations. These findings provide insights into the demographic events and migratory patterns that have shaped the genetic makeup of present-day Scandinavia. So, the Viking Age really was a period of intense contacts all around the world, related to a marked increase in the flow of goods customs, technology, and people to and from Scandinavia relative to preceding periods. One indication of migration during this period is the observation of gene flow into Scandinavia from the south, west, and east. The article uses a combination of ancient DNA analysis and comparisons with modern genetic data to understand the genetic history of Scandinavia. And no, this is not some woke propaganda, as clueless detractors like to call whatever doesn't fit their limited worldviews. Here's a breakdown of the complex methodology. First, we have ancient DNA acquisition and processing. Researchers obtained genetic data from 297 ancient genomes from archaeological sites all across Scandinavia. These genomes span a period of 2,000 years from the Roman Iron Age to the present. The researchers acknowledged a lack of samples between 500 BCE and 1 CE due to cremation practices during that period. Typically, ancient DNA is fragmented and damaged, so specialized techniques were used for extraction, library preparation, and sequencing. The researchers validated the ancient DNA data using several methods, checking for typical DNA features like short read lengths and patterns of cytosine deamination, which is a common form of DNA damage in ancient samples, estimating contamination levels in both mitochondrial DNA and X chromosome data, confirming the sex of the individuals based on genetic markers. The modern Scandinavian reference panel includes 16,638 modern individuals of Scandinavian ancestry, and the panel included data from various sources, including public databases, research cohorts, and data from the Decode Genetics. The researchers performed quality control steps to ensure data accuracy and remove potential biases. The panel served as a baseline for comparing the ancient genomes and understanding contemporary genetic patterns in Scandinavia. Then we have population genetic analyses. That was used to visualize genetic relationships between ancient and modern individuals. The method reduced complex genetic data into principal components that represent the major axes of genetic variation. Individuals with similar ancestry tend to cluster together on the PCA plot. F-statistics was also used. That would be a set of statistical methods used to quantify gene flow between ancient populations and potential source populations outside of Scandinavia. These statistics compare allele frequencies between populations to infer historical relationships and gene flow. Admixture analysis was also used to estimate the proportions of different ancestries present in individuals and populations. This method infers ancestry proportions based on allele frequencies in reference populations. And QPAD method. That method models the ancestry of a target population, for example, ancient individual or group, as a mixture of several source populations. It helps determine the most likely combination of source populations contributing to the target population's genetic makeup. The Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA haplogroup analysis, that means that Y chromosome and mitochondrial DNA haplogroups, which are inherited paternally and maternally respectively, were analyzed to provide insights into the origins and movements of ancestral populations. Specific haplogroups can be associated with certain geographic regions or populations. And then the focus on the north-south genetic cline. The researchers investigated the north-south genetic cline observed in modern Scandinavia, where northern populations show greater genetic distance from southern populations. They used F-statistics, PCA distances, and the distribution of Y chromosome haplogroup N1A1, often linked to Uralic-speaking groups, to explore the contribution of Uralic ancestry to this cline. By combining ancient DNA analysis with modern genetic data and various population genetic tools, they were able to uncover a more nuanced and detailed picture of the genetic history of Scandinavia, revealing the impact of various ancestries over time. The article is relevant to a previous statement about how people construct Viking identities using genetic ancestry testing. It underscores the complex genetic history of Scandinavia, revealing the impact of multiple ancestries beyond what might be stereotypically associated with Vikings. This will challenge assumptions about a simple or direct genetic connection to Viking heritage. The study is absolutely essential in questioning and basically turning this idea of Viking DNA into, well, quite a fantasy. And a dangerous one, in terms of how people approach or invent their heritage, in the sense of nitpicking what suits their purposes. There are some key themes in how people interpret their genetic data and connect it to the perception of Vikingness. And this has also been analyzed in a series of sociological studies. For example, we have the idea of DNA as a source of truth and identity. Recent studies found that participants strongly believed in the power of DNA to reveal objective truths about their identity. Many see DNA as a more reliable source than traditional genealogical research methods, believing it could definitely prove a connection to late Iron Age Scandinavians. They often state that GAT, so genetic ancestry testing, reveal who they are, equating their genetic makeup with their entire being. This highlights how DNA has become a powerful symbol of identity in contemporary society. And there are multiple ways to connect to Vikings. People can use various aspects of their GAT results to establish Viking connections. Some focus on matches to find living relatives with shared genetic markers, using these connections to trace lineages back to potential Viking ancestors. Others, primarily men, rely on Y chromosome haplogroups associated with Scandinavian populations as evidence of a Viking lineage. This interpretation transforms a very technical term used to categorize sections of DNA into a marker of social and historical groups, creating a sense of belonging to a geneticized collective. Haplogroup does not equal ethnicity, and I cannot stress this enough. Some participants interpret the ethnicity charts provided by these companies as concrete evidence of their historical ancestry. They see percentages associated with Scandinavian or Northwestern European regions as proof of a direct link to Vikings. However, the study I consulted also noted that several participants, especially those familiar with traditional genealogy, were also skeptical of these ethnicity estimates. Constructing Viking characteristics is also a thing. Going through some interviews revealed diverse and sometimes contradictory ideas about what it means to be a Viking. Many associate Vikings with physical traits like strength and tall stature and blonde hair, light skin, and so on. The association highlights the strong link between Viking imagery and whiteness, even if not explicitly stated. Some attribute personality traits like fierceness or resilience or a fighting spirit to their Viking ancestry, connecting these qualities to personal experiences with violence or overcoming challenges or a general sense of independence. Others emphasize Vikings as explorers and traders and skilled entrepreneurs, linking these characteristics to personal interests in travel, business, or political views. So this has to do with the tricky semantic elasticity of this term, Viking. It has been noted that the concept is inherently flexible, allowing individuals to project different meanings and interpretations onto it. The participants' understanding of Viking was influenced by their personal experiences, family narratives, and pre-existing cultural conceptions. This flexibility explains the varying emphasis on violent berserkers versus peaceful traders in their descriptions. In conclusions, individuals are essentially naturalizing socially constructed notions of Vikingness by linking them to their genetic makeup. They're interpreting cultural narratives, historical stereotypes, and even personal experiences through the lens of their DNA results. We should also highlight the role of these companies, which are a profitable business, let's not forget that, in reinforcing these interpretations by marketing their services as a way to uncover one's true ancestry. The construction of this geneticized Viking identity is a complex process shaped by the interplay of scientific data, cultural narratives, and personal interpretations. Vikings, even if we refer to them in the broader sense of the word of late Iron Age Scandinavians, especially those traveling abroad, were not a homogeneous ethnic group, and the obsession with Viking heritage says a lot about modern humans, not about Vikings. The Viking Age was much more nuanced and complicated and fascinating than these politicized and even extremist narratives that have been plaguing Viking and Scandinavian studies since at least 200 years. So let's take a step back, reevaluate, and let go of these outdated perspectives and stereotypes. I mean, if you really want to study history and archaeology. If not, then there is certainly a GAT company somewhere waiting to take your money to convince you of your superior heritage. This was Irina. Thank you for watching or listening, and I do hope this was somewhat enlightening to you. On my channel, you're also going to find several other videos deconstructing Viking myths, for example, the stereotype about their violent nature. So what was the approach to violence and warfare? You might want to watch this next video.